Facebook. You lucky, lucky dogs, you. Oh my gosh. You know, Comic Spot was created by this military veteran. I know, I'm gangster. I don't know the gang signs.
Thank you.
Anyway, I digress. Comic Spot is so that I can vet out veterans of comedy. And guess who we have here today? A veteran of comedy. Take that, Facebook. Yeah. So today you're going to get to know everything that he wants to tell us about his early life, what got him on the stage, how's it been going, who's he worked with, who's helped him, and a few fun things along the way. So today, your guest and mine is an amazing comedian named Joseph Anthony. He looks like A-Rod.
What? I wish.
He looks like J-Lo's husband. If I close my one eye, yeah, you're a total doppelganger.
Oh goodness! I wish I had 1/10 of his salary.
Joseph Anthony is a 30-year veteran. These are his words, not mine. 30-year veteran, you guys. Did I mention 30 years? Veteran of comedy. He's a comedian with 30 years experience, with successful experience in every venue imaginable. Imagine. More of an autobiographical truth spewer than a joke teller. He's been likened, get a load of this, to such greats. I can lose my breath on this one, you guys. He's been likened to such greats as Richard Pryor and Lenny Bruce. Oh my gosh, I want to hear this guy in person. Forget about YouTube. I want to see him in person, and you guys better do it too. One of the industry's most brilliant off the cuff comics as well. Welcome to Comic Spot. Finally, we have another veteran. Oh my gosh. Thank you for being here, Joseph Anthony. Woo!
That was quite an introduction. It seems like we should be done already.
I'll have what she's having.
Yeah, and it was my alter ego that contributed to that introduction. It wasn't me, because I'm extremely pessimistic and dark.
I want to hear about your life. Where did you grow up? Don't tell me it was on 3rd Street in Manhattan. I want to know where you grew up, when did you find out you're funny? I want to know it all. Tell me.
All right. Well, you could probably tell from the accent I'm from Alabama. I was born in Staten Island. I lived in Brooklyn, back to Staten Island. A little bit of Brooklyn, a lot of Staten Island, New York. You know, obviously, you're on the West Coast, so people may not know what that is. But
I'm from the Upper West Side of the map, Oregon. Fooled you.
Oh, okay. Okay, I got you. I thought you were talking about literally the Upper West Side of Manhattan, because that's how you know, Lower East Side, Upper East Side, you know, and that's the terminology, you know.
Yes.
But yeah, 2 of the 5 boroughs, and what else? That's basically where I grew up. I mean, you know, fire away, ask me anything you want.
Where in Brooklyn? Because I lived there for a year on 86th and 16th Ave.
Oh, wow. Okay, I'm not from that neighborhood. That's essentially Bensonhurst, right?
Yes.
That's where my wife was born and raised.
Wow.
And before we got married, before we had a baby and everything, I lived there with her for a year and a half. But my family is from, they call it downtown Brooklyn, South Brooklyn. Carroll Gardens is the neighborhood. Yes. When I was a kid, it was known as Red Hook, but then they termed it Carroll Gardens because Red Hook was not such a good area. So they said, okay, Red Hook is the not so great area, and it's all nonsense because it's all Red Hook to me. So yeah, Red Hook, Carroll Gardens, a little bit of Bensonhurst, and that's the Brooklyn. Staten Island doesn't matter because Staten Island is, you know, it's 12 miles across. So
yes.
No matter where you're from, it's all close.
Yes. So when did you find out you're funny? Like, why did you use comedy to keep bullies away or to get the girls? What was your motivation to bring out your funny? Or was it always there and it just came out of you?
Well, that's a lot of questions at once, but
I'm good at that.
I guess knowing that I was funny. I'll tell you a cute story about you know, having some inclination about this funny thing. I was in the 3rd grade, And the teacher's name, I'll never forget, was Mrs. Serber. And she was very rigid and uptight, little tiny woman, always like shirt tucked tightly into the pants. And I don't think she liked me, but I was also troubled. But so she lined up all the kids, and I don't understand the purpose of this exercise. They probably wouldn't allow it today, but she lined up all the students in the class, and each of them had to tell her what they wanted to be when they got older.
Wow.
I sort of like a secret, but that wasn't really a secret. So you could hear the person in front of you saying, I want to be a police officer, I want to be a doctor. And then I came up, I didn't even know what a comedian was, and I was like, I want to make people laugh.
Oh.
And she was like, this is my best impression of Mrs. Serb. I'm heat exhausted today, so I apologize. It's very hot here on the East Coast.
Yes.
And she was like, what does that mean? How are you going to make a career out of that? What is that? I says, I don't know. I want to make people laugh. And then I was like, she's like, well, what do you mean? So I was like, well, I'll do anything. I'll hit myself with a garbage pail, anything. Like I couldn't. If she's asking for definitions from what are you, 8 years old in the third grade? And but apparently I had some,
good idea.
Some look at this is what I wanted to do. But she's asking me for definitions that I didn't have. So yeah, that was the first sign. And I did a lot of school plays when I was younger. And then I kind of got away from the arts, but it pulled me back in. I got into trouble. There was some fighting involved, and I reevaluated my life, and it brought me back to writing first, and then writing sort of led to comedy, and here I am.
That's an amazing story. I love that a lot. When was the very first time that you took stage at a bona fide comedy spot?
It was the first time I did some form of stand-up was in New York. I took a workshop, and I have a lot of respect for the guy that gave the workshop, but I wasn't getting anything out of it. That was in 1989. So I went on my own to a club in Brooklyn, which is no longer there. It's known as Pips Comedy Club. And any comic that's started here in New York went on stage at Pips Comedy Club. Yes. And I went up on stage in January of 1990. And you want to hear the story of the actual night?
Oh, heck yes.
Okay. So, this was something I wanted to try. I wasn't getting anything out of the workshop. And so I was like, I'm not going to wait till the culmination, because the culmination of the workshop was that we were going to go on at the comic strip in Manhattan. I was like, I can't wait. I got to do this, And so I planned who would be in the audience. It was an open mic night. But in those days, it was called the Comedy Boom. So open mic nights were packed. As you know, open mic nights can sometimes be dead, right?
Absolutely.
So open mic night was packed, but I picked 3 people. I have 5 sisters, 5 older sisters, by the way.
Wow.
So I picked the next up in age, closest to me in age, was my sister Marie. Because Marie and I always kind of had a kinship about, our plans, hopes, and desires. So I said, I need Marie there for support, because she's the only one in this family that kind of understands me. Then, of all my friends, I picked my friend Lenny. And the reason I picked him was because Lenny was born in Italy, grew up in South America, and he had the greatest laugh. When somebody has a contagious laugh? So Lenny had the greatest laugh. And I said, I know if I'm doing well, I'll hear Lenny's laugh. However, if I'm doing bad, Lenny will still laugh, only at me, and I'll find comfort in that. And then I picked this guy that I knew. I used to own a store, but before owning it, I got to know one of our beer vendors, who was just a huge fan of comedy. I mean, he knew all about stand-up. He was a big Howard Stern fan. In fact, he turned me on to Howard. And so I said, Jimmy's a guy that's kind of like a student of comedy, even though he's not a comic. I said, Jimmy will tell me how it really went. Yes. So I handpicked the 3 people, and I get up there and I'm doing the material that was maybe 3 weeks old. I've never done stand-up, and it's tough. It's not going great. And I think this is kind of where I found my improvisation calling, because it was a real tight club, what do they call that? Intimate or whatever. And like the first table butted up against the stage, so the people were right below you. and I'm trying to get through this material, and it's not going well, and you're dealing with a Brooklyn crowd, and they're tough to begin with. And so this girl's talking to another, the other girl at the table, and I just stopped the material. And I said something to the effect of, look, you want to get up on the stage, you got to show up early, you put your name on a list, and if you're lucky, they give you a microphone. And the crowd blew up. So even then I knew get off on a laugh. And I kind of found, working off the cuff is great, and it's something I'm good at. And so I ended up having a really good experience my first time on stage.
Oh, that's fabulous. Yeah, Brooklyn crowds can be very discerning and very like tough to get laughing. But once you got them,
I don't want to perform for them.
So that was your first time up and you did well. What are some high points along your 30 years of comedy? Is it 30 years or is it more than 30 now?
Well, January made 30 years. So
okay.
What month are we in? Who knows after COVID, right?
We
all lost 3 months. Yeah. So 9 months, 8 months, something like that. I kind of knew, we didn't do any panel, as they say. You didn't give me any pre-fed questions, but every interview will always ask me what are the highlights, and I usually kind of go blank because there's been so many highlights, but I don't know. After a while, they all melt into each other. So I thought about it. I gave some thought, figuring that question will probably come up, and you're on the West Coast, right?
Vegas.
Oh, okay. It's close to what? Have you ever heard of Fade In magazine? I don't know if they're still around.
I've heard of it. I don't know what it is.
It was very much on the lines of Entertainment Weekly.
Okay.
So they had a contest, and I was never one for contests. But a friend of mine said, "Hey, you should check this out." It's all right. Sent them a video. Suddenly I'm in the running. Suddenly I win this contest, and this was 2004. So being in comedy at that point, 14 years, having kind of paid my dues, I felt that this was a big deal. This felt very much like an opportunity to me. And it was because they did this big 2-page, what do you call it? Press, two-page, huh?
A big spread?
A big spread, yeah. I'm sorry. Like I said, I'm heat stroke today.
Yes.
So they did this, they covered me, and it was this beautiful write-up and pictures and the whole deal. And then they introduced me to some legit, I knew after years later, I found out these people were big agents, legit agents, and I was talking with Hollywood, and all these things were going to happen. And it really was like a high for me to win this contest and be kind of introduced to the end of the business that I couldn't get to, the people that you can't get on the phone. But it's probably just my demeanor and coming from New York that at a certain point I stopped becoming a comic and I stopped becoming Joseph the Man. And I kind of it wasn't happening fast enough. I felt that they were failing on their promises, and they may not have been, so I kind of told them off. And I had an opportunity to go out to LA at one point. They were going to showcase me at all the clubs, and their goal was to try to get me like a deal or a legit agent or something like that. Or I could turn it down and take the expense money, the hotel, all that stuff. So I got mad at them, which was probably stupid on my part, and I said, send me the check. And I took the $1,200 and I walked away. I'm a little sorry about that, but that's my temper, So that's was kind of
totally understandable, because there's a lot you don't know when you're getting the shaft.
Yeah, and that'll happen a lot, and I'm not good at it. I always said, and I'm repeating myself, but I always said I'm a man first, a comic second. And as you know, probably know enough by now, unfortunately, that a lot of the industry will group you and treat you like comics. We're not comics. We're individuals.
That's right.
I do what I do. Nobody does it like me. And, don't group me. Talk to me as a person. And at a certain point, even if I needed the money, which, having a family and a home, a lot of times I did, I'm not an argumentative person, but at a certain point you go, that's where I'm drawing the line.
Yep.
That's where I'm saying, no, you can't do this anymore.
That's enough. I
Yeah.
have a, yeah, yeah. I've been
A
through a
lot.
few things, and I'm only a five, going on 6 years in the biz, and I've seen enough for a lifetime, but I still have more time to do. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
that so many comics, rightfully so, are afraid to speak up, say what they want, and I've even been in that boat to some extent, because it's such a saturated industry. We all want to
yes,
work, we all want opportunity, but you shouldn't have to trade in your self respect for that.
no, and I think that bookers, agents, club owners need to treat comedians and comics with more respect. And I think that comics need to treat each other with far more regard. You know,
Well,
there's a lot of disrespect, but
yeah, well,
whatever.
but I don't want to make this like a downer, but
No, me neither.
if you look at my website, my byline since 1993 is I sat down, especially when I came up. It was the time of hooks. Everybody had a hook, you know.
Yes,
So I looked at myself. I'm doing it 3 years. I'm pretty good at what I do. Although if I looked back now at video, I'd probably cringe.
me too. Yeah.
I'm like, hey, I'm like, all right, what is my thing? Everybody had a thing back then.
Yes.
And I'm like, what is my thing? And I said, my thing is the truth. Like everything that comes out of me is not the truth of like I'm on the bus today, but literally like from the soul, like taking my life's pain and hardships and trying to make it funny for a bunch of strangers.
Yes.
So in that truth, y- y- uh, wait, backpedal me to what we were just talking about, the industry.
Yes.
You know, in that truth that the industry. A lot of them they understand, they feed on that desperation. A lot of them may be disappointed comics themselves, who knows, and comics are very jealous of each other, and it's very cutthroat. And yeah, you're right, it's crazy. And the whole business has just changed and transformed now. Like I don't even think I understand it. It's
I
all
know.
social media. It's really a totally different game from when I started.
Totally. I believe that because when people talk, people of your not age, but age where you came into comedy, like in New York or San Francisco, LA, in their booms, it's nothing like that now. Like people could start out and get good money, for instance, and lots
Yeah.
of work. And now you have to go to Timbuktu, like the last person I interviewed said, for $50, you know.
Yeah, I did all that stuff. I mean, basically, what I saw a career that was had a lot of momentum. I'd say right up to like 2007, I was on the fourth season of Last Comic Standing. I was a finalist. And you just start to feel, from the fade in thing to the Last Comic Standing to headlining all the rooms I did. I'm working, I'm making a living at it, and it just feels like okay, it's going in the direction it should. The economy falls out around '08, '09, you start to feel the effects of that. And then when the comedy world sort of woke up again, social media just changed the game. And I have people that I started out with that are, making a living that because they embraced the social media. Um, but it really, unfortunately, for the most part, not to be pessimistic totally,
Mhm.
it's not about the funniest guy wins. You
You
know,
have a very good point there.
yeah. I mean,
I've seen people with social media out the yin yang get up on stage and they can't hold a room.
they don't have the chops. They don't have the chops. They haven't scraped their knees. They don't, but because they put a lampshade on their head and 10 million people watched it, they're headlining rooms.
Thank you.
It's not the way it should be.
Mm-mm. No, there's not
But
enough respect for all of the years you've put in the business. You know, I some people can go 30, 40 years and it's like their first week they didn't learn anything. But for the most part, when I here in Vegas, you see comics and comedians 30, 40 years in the business, Anthony, hosting,
I know.
doing
Hey, do you know a friend of mine? Maybe you've had him on, Greg Vaccarillo.
I know the name, and I've asked if I could interview him, and I hadn't heard back yet. I'd love to interview him.
I mean, he's originally an East Coast guy. We started out together. Other than Facebook, I don't have any communication with him, or I'd help you out. But he's a funny guy. But
Yeah.
not to be, maybe to change the gear a little bit, because this could be sound like a bitter conversation. It's so easy. In
Right.
fact, when comics friends of mine start to complain to me, it's become now. I actually don't talk to comics on the phone because it's the same within 30 seconds. It's the same conversation.
Yeah, I don't want to do Zoom.
Yeah, you ask somebody how you doing, and within 30 seconds, you're not hearing about their life, their girlfriend, their wife, their kids, successes, failures. You're hearing the complaint. And
Yep.
it's like, I know, I could finish your sentences. Can't we talk about something else? So to give, any would-be comics maybe in this crazy, not make sense business more than ever, a hope
Mhm.
of inspiration is that for all I go through to get to that stage, and it weighs heavy on you, both not just the business, but life's business. There comes a moment, 95% of my shows, where I'm 5 minutes into my set, uh, and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember why I'm here, and I am good at this. That little
Exactly.
kid in the third grade is up on stage, and I got to make these people laugh. They paid, and I end
Exactly.
up doing it.
We're not here for, you know, waiting around to be respected or waiting to get treated correctly. We're really here. We lose focus that we're here because something in our life made it a passion for us to make others laugh.
And it's
And
it's probably in any art. It's easy, it's easy to lose your passion when the almighty dollar comes into play. When you're worried about keeping a roof over your head, but yet you really want to write this book or this new bit, or even put together a sketch on social media, whatever it is, you're thinking about money, and sometimes it's hard to divide from that. you
yes,
know so when you're young, youth really is wasted on the young. Go out there and tackle everything, because suddenly one day you wake up and you have this full life, and you do forget why you're doing it. It becomes a job, and you know that can jade it.
yes. So when you, throughout your years, are there people you want to give a shout out to that helped you along the way, or clubs that gave you more stage time than others? Is there like people you're so thankful for in the biz?
Yeah, not fully prepared for that question, because I'd probably end up leaving some people out. But
Yes,
off,
absolutely.
yeah, of course, but off the top of my head, well, there's a guy, when I started, he was headlining me in little rooms when I felt I wasn't ready. But he used to say to me, "You're a headliner," and he was this guy, just kind of like a. I don't want to describe him and sound derogatory, but he was a guy that loved showbiz,
Oh,
I think, more than it loved him. And he
oh,
was good to me. His name was Pete. I'll leave it at that. And Pete was everything he'd get his hands on, any restaurant, whatever. He'd have me headline it, early on, and so he had a lot of faith in me. And he was probably right, because I was really good at what I did. Guys hated following me in the beginning. I was very strong. My childhood mentor, not mentor, my childhood idol, who I ended up meeting and working with, and to me it was like meeting Superman, was Pat Cooper. He's
wow.
out there in Vegas. You know
Yeah,
Pat Cooper?
I haven't met him.
Come on.
No.
Pat Cooper, when you watch these shows like on PBS, and they show all the great comics through the years, from the era of like the 50s and 60s, you never see Pat. And the thing is, because Pat's a tough guy. He's got no filter. He's I'm kind of like a little Pat in a way. When I used to tell him, Pat, I told off this book. He's like, you can't do that. That's how he says, I'm a star. You
Oh,
gotta wait till you're a star to tell them off. But Pat, I respect him. And as a kid, he's an Italian comedian. Doesn't speak Italian, but he's an Italian American comedian, or as he would say, an American Italian. And every Italian household had a Pat Cooper album,
wow.
an LP, a vinyl. And like a lot of people I know from my age group, you would grow, you would listen to that album, and I just idolized this man, and even as a kid, I didn't know what he was talking about, but I loved the sound of his voice,
Wow.
and I loved the audience laughing. So fast forward, I get into comedy, and I remember thinking one day, what if I were to meet Pat Cooper, you know? Um, and I found out he was working at Caroline's, but the old Caroline's in the Seaport. And I said, I'm going to go with this. You see, Pat had an uncle who knew my grandfather. I didn't even know my grandfather, but
Wow.
they were from the same town in Italy.
Wow.
So I called my father up, and I'm like, Dad, what was that story about Pat Cooper knowing Grandpa that you always told me? So he tells me the story, and I call up the Seaport. Caroline's at the Seaport. And the girl who answers the phone, I leave her this long message. Your Uncle Vito used to play cards in the Mola Club, which is the town in Italy, in the Mola Club. And he calls me back, and he's like, Joseph Anthony, this is Pat Cooper. I got your message. I don't know what you're talking about, but if you want to call me, here's my number. Oh, I wanted to rip the answering machine out of the wall and tell everybody Pat Cooper called me. So he put me on a few shows with him, and look him up because he retired. I hope he's doing well. He must be like 87, 88 now. I understand he retired like 2-3 years ago, and Pat was, I don't know, one of a kind. He really was one of a kind, and he had this big resurgence due to Howard Stern in the 90s. So a whole generation of younger people that never heard of him suddenly became Pat Cooper fans. This is a guy that was like a star in the 60s, but then he kind of became segregated to only Italian audiences. So he goes on Howard in like 91 or 92, and the show goes so insane and so incredible that suddenly this whole new generation knows who Pat Cooper is. Wow. And at that time, I opened up for him at a club in New Jersey, but we had to go into a hotel, so it was like 700 people. And it was crazy. I mean, for someone so new to comedy, 2 years in the business, to stand in front of 700 people, when they laughed, it was like, you felt it in your chest, Yes. And when they didn't, it was the biggest silence you ever didn't hear.
Oh my gosh.
I
remember the name Pat Cooper, but I don't know his comedy. So I'm going to look it up, and I'm going to try to get a hold of him too. Maybe take him out and try to do an interview at a restaurant.
Make sure you yell, because unless he's stubborn, he never got a hearing aid. I used to call him up, and he couldn't hear me. He had the greatest line that a friend of mine used to always love. I'd call him up. Hello. I said, Pat, it's Joseph Anthony. And he'd go, why?
Oh my gosh. How great is that? I'll look him up, and I'll get a hold of him too.
Yeah, he's out there. He lives in Vegas.
Okay, I'll find him. I will find him. So do me a favor before we need to hang up on this Zoom thing, whatever this is.
I wish I could have contributed more. I don't know,
No, that's great.
I hope it was interesting. That's all.
It's so interesting. Are you kidding me? Oh my gosh. Do you know, I want to tell you guys out there in Facebook land, you Zuckerberg people, the thing is that comics give up a lot to be in the business 5 years. He's put up with this business for 30 years, he said in January. The things he's put on a back burner to make people laugh could make your great-grandmother's toenails curl in the grave. So you got to show respect for those that came before us, who have been in the business, who have lasted in the business. Anything he says is interesting, and you guys need to start. If you're a comedian and you're in the business and you don't know who's come before you, you're not a comedian. Get out there and listen to people. If you learn nothing else from me before I croak, get to know comics that came before you, like Pat Cooper. I don't know. I got to look it up myself. So I'm a hypocrite.
Well said. Well said. It's well said.
Anything you say, anytime you open up, anytime you want to come back and talk more, tell me you want to come back on, because you don't always get a lot of time to talk on this Zoom thing. I'm limited.
I got some crazy stories for you.
Can I book you for September, please? If on Facebook Messenger, will you come back?
Yeah, let's talk. Sure.
Okay.
We'll make it a whole story show.
Like the first week of September, I'll hit you up to come back. Yes, please.
Yeah, cool.
I'm going to get you right the minute I get off here. I'm going to hit you up for that date and time, and I'll let you guys know. So you were amazing. From a comedy point of view, I was just wondering if and we see the world differently. I'm putting myself at your level just for a minute. Go with me.
We're all people. Go ahead.
So from a comedic point of view, the world is in hell in a handbasket scenario right now. How do we get through it? How would you suggest people cope and make it through a pandemic and come out better off? What the hell? Do you have some funny way for people to cope?
You know what? To answer that very simply and not get profound and long-winded, just keep your wits about you. Because for all we are all going through, you would think we would be united. And yet, because everybody's frustrated and stressed out, this is just laymen, not just comics. I see how angry people are. And I'm like, if there's any time we should be on the same page, it's now. So you're gonna come across that, that asshole on the road, in the store. So just keep your wits about you, because it's the greatest survival tool.
Yes, that's wonderful.
Does that make sense?
It does. It does a lot. I'm surprised with the way the sky is falling and the world's crashing around us that people have the audacity to argue with each other. For God's sake.
Yeah.
Nothing else. Get a grip.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I'll get with you the minute I get off here for another date to come back on here. Hope your wife doesn't mind that you have a date.
She don't even like me. We'll get. You want to hear stories? I'll talk about my marriage.
Let's do that. I can't wait to hear more from you. Joseph Anthony, where can people follow you on social media? Where do you need more followers?
I have some clips on my website, josephanthonycomedian.com. And I have some silly stuff, hundreds of YouTube videos on Joseph Anthony Performer.
YouTube.
That's the YouTube, Joseph Anthony Performer.
Got it. Wonderful. I'm going to get people to go on there and watch. And
I have some new stand-up clips that will be added to the YouTube channel very soon. They're being edited now.
Got it. Wonderful. I'm going to post this video with everything I feel from talking to you. And that's just the raw video. And in 2 to 3 days, my editor guy will make this look like a sitcom. It'll make it look like you were on a sitcom with me, music and credits,
cool,
everything.
Cool.
So I'll send that to you and you can share it with your peeps.
Yeah, that'll be great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Linda.
Love you lots, Joseph Anthony. Bye.
Same here. Lots of luck to you.
Lots of love to you. Bye.
Everybody's talking.